Hi, I'm Randy Altman with Post Perspective. We're here at NAB 2023. This is David Jeffery next to me. He is a veteran post-producer. He's worked on a ton of different shows over the years. And welcome, David.
Thank you, Randy, for having me.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
We've known each other for a very long time, so it's really nice to be able to sit down in person and have a chat.
Should we tell the audience how we met?
We could, actually, because I think that starts sort of at the beginning. So you were working on just a little show called Bones at the time.
I was on Bones, and you were editor-in-chief of Post magazine.
Correct, yes.
And so you approached me for an interview. I gave the interview. Should we tell them the story about the photo I took?
Well, I did. Would you say it was one of your first selfies?
It was my first selfie, so I had a DSLR. And I remember sitting at my desk taking a whole bunch of pictures trying to get that right expression. And I look back on it and I just kind of smile and laugh a little bit. But you did a great job on the article, and I think you represented me and Bones quite well.
Thank you.
And very accurately. So
that's when it all began.
So that's when it all began.
Yeah. So first, let's sort of start at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
What, for people that don't know, and also because we have a section in the magazine called Behind the Title. Nobody actually does exactly what their title says. So as a post producer, why don't you just walk us through the role?
So generally, what a post producer does on episodic drama, and that's what I primarily worked on. I've only done one reality show in my career, and I haven't done a multicam, I call it sitcom, setup.
Yep.
So we're responsible, first of all, for handling the post budget, implementing it, reporting it to the executives, and of course to the line producer and showrunner executive producer. We're responsible for setting up dailies, hiring all the vendors, running those vendors by line producers as well as executives. We're responsible for helping hiring. Normally what happens is the showrunner on a show will have a team of editors that they'd like to work with, but sometimes those editors are not available. I'll make recommendations for editors that I've worked with in the past. And these days, the studio chimes in as well. They have a batch of editors that they approve of. And though they're certainly open to producers that are in good standing and that come highly recommended. And I basically help with the post executive create. Normally I get handed a schedule from the post executive. I modify that schedule based on conversations with the post executive as well as my producers. And then once we go through the cut process, that is, we receive dailies, the first editor will do an editor's cut, then bring in the director's cut, and then it'll go to the producers. After the producers have their time with the cut, it'll go to Studio Network. We get all those notes, and then we lock the cut. And then we begin the post-process. The post-process includes video assembly at a facility, color correction at a facility, titling, dropping in visual effects shots. Mm-hmm. Concurrently, I should backtrack, it depends on how involved the show is. In the case of, let's say, Shantaram, which, again, I really loved what you did with Stefan Duccio and covering Shantaram.
The cinematographer, and that's an Apple show.
That's an Apple show, and I was the post-producer on it for Paramount Apple. I make sure that the DP gets in, does their pass, and then they turn it over to me. In the case of Shantaram, that was also a very busy visual effects show. And we had hired on our payroll a visual effects producer and a supervisor and a team of coordinators. And we had a visual effects editor. But often on a show like this, like Queen of the South, which is a little bit more low budget, I oversee directly the visual effects vendor normally I handle 1 or 2 or 3 vendors to do the work, and I'll coordinate with the visual effects supervisor, and we'll make sure the visual effects progress. And when I mean progress, it starts in pre-production. So the visual effects supervisor will attend all the meetings. I will be there at the meetings, and then make sure that the visual effects supervisor is on set when necessary. And then, of course, the implementation of the visual effects shots and making sure that the variations, the versions that we give notes on get to editorial, that they get cut in by either a visual effects editor or by the editorial team. And then I make sure that those notes are given from the editor as well as the showrunner and myself, and they're given back to the visual effects supervisor. And then getting back to the finishing at the videos, on the video side, making sure that the credits, first of all, the paper credits are locked, that they've been approved by the studio as well as the producers. They first start with the producers, then it goes to the studio legal team. And then once that happens, normally my supervisor will go in and supervise dropping in the credits. Credits are a big deal. And then ultimately, video-wise, we get to the point of finishing. We get the audio track, which I'll touch upon in a second. That's a separate conversation. And the audio track is married to the video, and then we make deliverables. And I normally go in with my supervisor and QC check that the Airmaster is right, it's correct, all the shots are in, all the correct visual shots are in, check the titles, and then we deliver it. And in the case of Shantaram, we delivered it to Apple and it went into QC. Now getting back to audio, concurrently, once we lock a picture, we have spots. We have a spot for the visual effects team, and we have a spot for audio. And we bring in our supervising sound editor, as well as maybe a dialogue editor, and we will sit with the editor and the showrunner, and we'll go through each scene. We'll check the original dialogue recordings, make sure there's clarity, and we'll also spot ADR. And then the audio team will go off. The dialogue editor will cut the dialogue track. We will record ADR. I'll make sure with my coordinator and my supervisor that we bring in the actors, either the leading actors or the supporting actors. And eventually we get to the dub stage. And I normally get a pass on the dub stage after the mixers do their pass before the showrunner comes in. But it can vary, like the case of Shantaram, because we wanted to use every minute on the stage. The showrunner and I went in at the same time and gave notes. Now, one other process that is important to focus upon is when we spot for audio, we also spot for music. We bring in the composer, the music editor, etc. So the bottom line, it's a whole process. There's a lot of things that I could go into detail, but I oversee all of that, track the costs, and make sure we get the deliverables to the appropriate teams, marketing team, to in the case of a network, to broadcast operations, and of course international, and make sure that we go through the QC process and make sure our masters are within spec.
It's a lot. It's the entire process. And before I let you go, though, I know. Can you mention the pilot that you worked on recently?
I did a pilot. I can't talk about it at this time.
Okay.
But last year I did Shantaram. Wonderful project. I hope everybody checks it out. And then I was blessed to do 4 years on this show, Queen of the South, and I had a great time. So, looking forward to the new project and continue working in post.